Another live. Hello, welcome back. I say welcome back because I actually started these lives yesterday, and I'm really excited to be back. Back for 2020. Do I need the mic clipped on? You could hear me yesterday. I don't think I need to clip the mic on. I'm just going to put it there. And if you can't hear me, just tell me because I'll speak up anyway. I'm always a loud talker. It comes from being an ambassador and talking loud at things. So I appreciate you being in here tonight and being a part of the live stream again. I've got the stream up here so I can catch your questions. And I've got the live in front of me here, which is even better. And we're going to talk a few things whiskey. I've been asked some great questions in the last 24 hours since the first stream, which has been great. Great to see us all kicking off as well, kicking the year off. I've had another think about the stream since I talked about them last night. I'm going to do these at least weeknights. I think that's easy enough. I'll see how I go on weekends, but doing them every single day is quite taxing. So I'm going to see if I can do them on the weekends. If I do, you'll see it in our story, but we'll start with at least Monday to Friday. So happy Fridays to you all, TGIF, and I hope you're all have had a wonderfully short week to begin with, if you like, because I know I only just started back yesterday, and now I got a weekend. Isn't that fun? Okay, so good to see everyone coming in. Sam, Whiskey Saurus, Calte, Sable, Brick, Robert, Scott Fitzsimons, Just Stramming, Robert Akers. Good to see you all. Did I say Robert Akers twice? Robert Akers, good to see you. Really appreciate you working with me on this special project that we've got brewing at the moment. One of about 12 special projects that we're actually working on with members, actually, which is really exciting. Now, I'm going to put that aside because that was yesterday's bottle. Today, I have literally a smidge left in this of 89.10. And because it's so damn hot in Sydney tonight, and it is quite muggy even in the office tonight, I'm going to go for a Young and Sprightly. Your mood determines, and the temperature, the weather and your mood play a huge part in... I didn't get to do the sound test on this one. Sorry, guys. There it is. Your mood and what you're dramming on plays a huge influence on what you're interested in terms of what you're interested in dramming in. And sometimes if it's middle of winter and it's a cold, blustery night, it's like something heavily peated might be the go. Something sherried might be the go. In the middle of summer, however, Australian summer, in Sydney summer, it's very humid in Sydney tonight, and it's quite warm today as well in general. So Young and Sprightly, something from something that has got a lot of vibrancy and life and spritz to it, which is fun. You better talk about methoxyphenols. No, I'm not talking about methoxyphenols. I'm not talking about cresols or phenols tonight at all. We touched on that last night. It was a bit of a nerdy way to start the year, I admit, so I do apologise for that. I'm going to keep some of these live streams really quite in depth, but I'll keep some of them fairly light and fluffy as well. Just a chance for us to have a chat and talk about some of the things going on in the whiskey scene. Not just the society, as you know. I mean, I've been talking about whiskey now for 7 months, on this stream, and we really only touch on some society stuff. I mean, I drink Society Drams. I'm the national ambassador for it. It's just at the same time, and you're watching the Society channel, of course. But it's good for us to sort of an all-encompassing view of what's going on in whiskey currently, historically, and learn a bit more about spirit, about casks, about the people that make it. And I find that's the exciting part, is the story behind how it comes to be and how it goes from grain to glass in many cases. Mr. Cream, good to see you. So how long did it take the Melbourne February event to sell out? Good question, Just Dramming. The Melbourne February event sold out in about a day. Melburnians are currently ravenous for our events, and because they are the talk of the town when it comes to whiskey events, we'll have some more Melbourne events lined up shortly. I'm hosting the one on the 8th of Feb, and then I'll be hosting another one, I think, in early March. But of course, I'll be introducing, and coming along with me on the ride will be our new state manager, Alex Moores, who was announced in the January outturn. I'm getting my head on myself here. If you skip to page 16, Alex Moores joins the team, I always say. We wish Owen Smythe all the best, who's our outgoing state manager. He's just too flat out at the moment with his other work. So it's really great to see that Alex has joined us and being a part of the society team in Australia. And indeed worldwide. He knows the UK team very well as well. He's quite an intrepid traveller himself. Why, that's a great topic. Maybe Monday. We'll talk about mood and dram on Monday. The two things I want to touch on tonight was one, about our first event coming up in Sydney. Actually, I know I've been talking about Melbourne events, but it's the Robbie Burns Supper. It's in the events page in the inside back cover of Outturn. It's the Robbie Burns Supper. Robbie Burns was Scotland's national poet. He lived between 1756 and 1796 or somewhere around there. I'm going to get the dates wrong. I'm really sorry. I know he's about 200 and something years old. He would be about 260 something years old, but I'll get the dates right. But he was the national poet, and he's known for some of the most beautiful poetry ever to come out of Scotland, along with many other inventions and other art forms that have come out. And it's always good. And it's always good to raise a dram, have a bit of haggis, and celebrate Robbie Burns. And so we're doing that at Sydney at the RAC. We've got the what do you call it? The ISC room at the RAC. It's a lot of acronyms. ISC stands for... Nope, I can't remember. But RAC stands for Royal Automobile Club, one of our home bases for Sydney, if you like. Along with Archie Rose and along with other few other venues that we routinely do events at. There's another event coming up in Sydney on the 8th or 9th or 6th. Sorry, 6th? 6th, 8th, 9th, 6th. I'm going to get the dates wrong. I should be a bit more organised. 8th. Summer Whiskey Desserts. The venue is to be announced. We got the venue a little bit... There's a bit of a misprint, but we're going to get... Not a misprint. We went to print too quickly on this to get the venue in. There's going to be the venue might change. Probably will change. We're working with a different venue at the moment. Will all be announced soon, so we do apologise for that. Big ups for Owen. Absolutely big ups for Owen. Monster of Malt, Alec Walker, Mads Schmoll. Good to join you. Thanks for joining in. Is there kick-ons after the Melbourne event at Whisky and Element? Calte, is there ever a Melbourne event where there's not kick-ons? That's the answer. That's your answer. The answer is no. There always is. So we always... the answer is yes. There's always kick-ons after the event because the room is ours for the evening. The formalities will be about 2 hours-ish of the actual hosted event, and then, of course, the bar will be open for members to enjoy drams at the bar afterwards, and, of course, until the bar staff say, everyone head downstairs, because that's the bar that's open. Never. I'm having a dram tonight of Glovebox Sonata in B minor, 89.10. The reason why I've picked this one out is because this is actually our, what we call, bottle of the moment. Now, for those of you who are already members, you know how it works. You're already a member. I'm going to try and get that in frame. You're already members of the society, so you don't need me to tell you, what these are really. But I'll tell you what this is. This is bottle of the moment, we call it. It's basically, if you decide to join the society, you can join with a bottle now at the moment. And it's a really, really economical way to join the society. So society membership is $120 per year. We routinely do offers for like $99 here and there, different months, etc. But I think this one at the moment is, this bottle was normally like $155 or $165, somewhere around there. But you can join with membership and this bottle, I think this makes the bottle $99 or something. So you're getting sort of like 30 off your membership and another 60 off the bottle. So whatever it is, it's all on the website. And it means that you get a chance to get a really lovely single cask whiskey to start your journey. In this case, it's a 7-year-old. So it's on the younger end of the spectrum, but it's very much matured. It's a refill sherried whiskey, 64.1%. 64.1. That's a monster of a proof, and it shows it's got a big bombastic nose on it. You wouldn't guess this for being 7 years old. It is spirit forward, and you've got to appreciate what 7 years can do. The activity of the cask, how active that cask is, how it moves around. Sometimes, for some whiskies, 7 years it's barely started maturing. And that's why some whiskies go the distance of 50, 60 years in oak. Very, 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 very rarely. But you've also got to appreciate that some whiskies, the cask interaction and the activity of that spirit and the activity of the cask, absorption of the oak into that spirit in such a short amount of time, even in Scotland, where the temperatures don't cook the spirit, and I'm saying that deliberately, even in Scotland where the temperatures don't cook the spirit, it still finds a lovely integration point of the spirit and the oak coming together. So we don't see much out of Distillery 89. This distillery is renowned for being one of the most sought-after blended malts for many, many years. I'm sure it still is. It's also one of my favourite distilleries in terms of its profile. And it's also one of my favourite distilleries in the fact that it's one of the ugliest distilleries in Scotland. It just looks like a giant black box with some pipes. It's very industrial looking. It's the opposite of Strathisla as a distillery. So it's quite industrial looking and quite But it's got there's some lovely, like when it says glove box Sonato, it actually does almost have like that, like leather gloves in an old Jag sort of like an old sort of old car glove box. If you remember growing up, the smell of your dad's glove box kind of thing, sitting in the passenger seat playing with it until he tells you to stop playing with the glove box. Was that just me? I don't know. That was me. My dad drove a Peugeot. I drive a Renault. I'm a huge fan of French cars. So I think from my childhood. But my dad drove a Peugeot. I think he had a 504, then a 505 at one point. So a 1984 505, which is the car I learned to drive on. And that was it had a certain smell to it. Cars of that era, they had sort of like almost like a, you know, the really thick wool and linen seats, and the leather, the sort of the leather dashes that heated up quite a bit in the sun. Less UV protection in the windshields and windows back then. Tinting wasn't really a thing. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe it was. I don't know. But and therefore, you know, sort of that smell of hot seat buckle. I'm saying that it's actually quite an appealing nose, because like all noses, like all aromas in whiskey, they remind us of a time and place, and a sort of a sense of almost like a throwback. And that's one of the beauties of whiskey. I find we get sort of we get to taste these moments in time again and say, wow, that reminds me of, and it might have been something you tasted yesterday or even earlier that day, and maybe like, oh, that reminds me of that dinner we had last night. Or it might be, the hot seat buckle and glove box of my dad's 1984 Peugeot. 93241F. That's quite a mouthful of a name. But I'm glad to hear that was your first bottle as a new member. Awesome to hear you've already taken advantage of the bottle of the moment. Thank you so much. So the bottle of the moment changes every 4 to 6 weeks, and we're until sold out. We had a big rush on the first bottle of the moment. This one has been quite steady, and then we'll have the new bottle of the moment will probably be on, I'd say, in about a week or so, given the number of memberships we get per day, and the number of people who do choose this is really exciting. So, like I say, it's a young and sprightly. Now, it's sitting at 64.1. It's a refill sherry cask. So it's got that real sort of like, it's a refill sherry, so it has got the sherry element going on here, but it's not overwhelmingly sherried. It's quite spirit forward. When I say spirit forward, I'm getting a nose and a taste of that distillery character, which I find hugely appealing. There's nothing less exciting for me in a whiskey, and I've said this before, there's nothing less exciting for me than a whiskey that is overly encumbered by cask, where the cask dominates the story. I've always said it should be spirit, cask, meet in the middle. And if I'm being honest, I like it when the spirit just overwhelms just slightly, because you get a sense of what you're tasting, you get a sense of the time and place, you get a sense of all the intricacies and nuance of the spirit character. Why is each distillery different? Why don't we just have one mega distillery if it's all the same? It's not all the same. Everyone uses different barley, different yeast, different types of different water supply, different still shape and size, different length of distillation run, different fermentation times. All these things which we can dissect into different live streams, of course, over the next few weeks. But I love talking. I don't talk too much about production either on this channel, as you'll notice, because again, it can get a bit sort of like, you said that Mortlach was 2.8111 times, and someone else told me. Anyway, it gets a bit sort of like, arguing over technical stats, which I prefer. Like I said before, I prefer the story about why this is the why. Which sounds a bit sort of, I guess, it sounds a bit philosophical, almost a little bit metaphysical. I don't mean it to. I mean it to be a bit sort of like, it's so much more exciting than talking numbers and stats. So, but it's all printed on the bottle. It's already all printed on the bottle. At Dr. Matt is kind of talking about methaphexols and feelings. He can't help himself. Yeah, look, feelings. No, but it is. It's emotions that come through from previous experience and remembering how things tasted when and then. And I really do think that this particular cask has a really quite old school nature to it. We had recently a cask 1.210 kept in the dark. It was a juicy oak and vanilla from Distillery 1, a 7-year-old as well. And one of the tasting notes on it was that it had notes of like a dusty old dunnage warehouse. Notes of dusty old dunnage warehouse you normally find on things like 35, 40-year-old whiskies, where they actually have been sitting in an old warehouse for 40 years. To get those kind of profiles and those kind of that kind of flavour out of a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old cask is truly remarkable and a testament to the quality of spirit and cask selection by our tasting panel. Ooh. 64.1%. It packs a punch. I had to try it neat, but I'm going to add a few drops of water to that. It will be probably, I'm being quite liberal with the water on that one because it's a belter, but it's a fun whiskey. It's a great summer whiskey as well. Summer drams, and that's what watermelon drams are meant to be. It's about sort of, fun summer drams that you can enjoy in the sun on a hot evening. You've had a long day, whatever it is, and that's exciting. Now, I got asked a question earlier, either last night or this morning, I can't remember, from member Cal, who asked about buying casks. Now, because there was recently this article on BBC, which went a bit viral on a few Facebook pages and groups and stuff over the last 24 hours, about how there's an auction coming up where the auction is selling off whole casks of whiskey. And is a Glen-esque for £3,000 or something? And wait, not Glen-esque. If it was Glen-esque, it wouldn't be £3,000 because the Glen-esque closed in World War One. It would be a Glenord, sorry, not esque, Glenord, for £3,000, or thereabouts, or £3,000 to £5,000 for the cask, or something like that. And there's a 1995 Springbank for £40,000 to £50,000. Now, that's the estimates of what they're going to go for, but there's had a lot of hype, so I reckon they'll probably go for a lot more. One of the comments I left on one of these things was, that's a big no from me. Now, there's a few reasons for that. I've bought casks before, I've sold casks before, I've dealt in casks, dealing with casks and buying part casks and things like that before. So has our saddlemaster Andrew, who released his own casks of Glenfarclas as the Whiskey and Wisdom bottlings. So both Andrew and I have some experience in this. He has a bit more in terms of bottling them locally, and I've had different experience in terms of selling them, and in terms of or handing them on, or having the society bottle one or two, as we've done already. My thoughts on this are, if you're going to be buying casks at auction like that, if you're considering it, just remember you're paying quite a premium. Not that much, really, not a huge premium, I'll be honest, but a premium. There is a premium involved in that. Because you're buying them at an auction. Now, just about every society bottle I see that goes at secondary auction, every bottle of whiskey outside the society, generally goes for a premium above what we sold it to members for, or goes for a premium above what it retailed for in general mass market whiskies. If there's something that you from yesteryear that you really missed out on, you see it come up, and you're willing to pay far and above what it would have been sold for a year, 2, 3, 4 years back when we first released it, that's your prerogative. We always say that thing, of course, it's best not to buy secondary, because we've even had a partner bar buy some bottles once and they turned out to be fakes. That does happen. There are fakes on auction. Well, they're not confirmed fakes. I should reference that. But they looked very, very dodgy. So in saying that, there's a whole sort of I always say tread carefully in auction. There are some spots here and there that are good to find. But even with casks, first of all, there's a few things I say when picking out if you're interested in buying a cask of whiskey. One is why. Are you looking to bottle it yourself? Are you looking to... what are you going to do with it? I mean, it's going to reach a point of maturation where something has to happen to it. It's not like stocks or shares or something that can sit there and move around and stuff, and bonds and whatnot. These casks you have to bottle them at some point. What are you going to do with those casks? If let's say you buy it and it's a 10-year-old cask and it's ready at 12 years, or it's ready at 10 years when it's bought, are you looking to then bottle it? If you're bottling it, are you bottling it under your brand? In which case you're welcome to, but you're suddenly going to be stuck with 250 bottles of Glenord. And apart from the 7 people in Australia that have ever heard of that distillery, you're going to have a lot of Glenord on your hands. So I hope you really enjoy drinking Glenord. Second thing is, just you really should have a passion for the distillery that you're interested in buying a full cask from. It's a true passion, a labour of love project, and a huge dent in the wallet, not just in terms of buying the cask, but also the bottling line, the labelling, the distribution, the shipping, and of course Australian excise. you're looking at whatever it is, $32 to $40 per bottle in excise duty, GST, etc. There's a lot of hidden costs. That unless you start getting some economy of scale, that you can start bringing those costs down, like any business. Then it's kind of like there's obviously it's very much a buyer beware. And also, I'd just say if you are looking at spending £50,000 or about $100,000 Australian on a cask of Springbank, yes, it's a desirable distillery. It's well renowned, but it's also one of those. It's also, again, you're going to be looking at I think it's a sherry hogshead or something. So again, 250 liters, or maybe after 20 something years, might be 200 liters. I don't know, after Angel Share. Actually, it'd be a little bit less than that. It'd be a little bit more than that still. Anyway, but you're still having 200 liters of great spirit that you're going to have to do something with. So it's kind of, and remember, most brokers and third-party brokers for distilleries are not going to buy them at that inflation off you, and bottling them yourself is going to become quite difficult. So anyway, I'm just saying it's just a sort of like if you do it, you do it. Like, it's great. It's just that it's a strange move. I think it's a very strange move, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on this. I'll see if there's any questions coming in on this, by the way. There was also a Bruichladdich and a Lefroy. Yeah, there's a few casks in their stable. Hello from Arizona. Woo! Samuel Cast. I don't think I've had anyone from Arizona tuning in before. This is exciting. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Caution. Yeah, look, could be. That's a really good point. It just seems a bit sort of like there's a reason those casks are for sale, and it seems like someone's selling them at quite an inflated auction rate, just like you see bottles selling for quite inflated auction rates. So next time you see a bottle of Black Bamore selling for £10,000, one part of you can go, yep, that's what their going rate is for these days. But just remember, that bottle was $200 when it came out. So I'm saying it comes down to the age of that cask, the provenance of that cask, where it came from, the quality of the spirit. There's so many things that are associated with buying a full cask that do require a lot of research. That is often it is often quite hard to get that research, especially if you're buying through auction. Just like you don't know how many times a bottle of whiskey at auction has passed through hands, or maybe even worse. How do you know? So how do you know when the optimal time is to bottle? Says Sable Scotch. Okay. How do you know when the optimal time bottles? That comes down to tasting the cask, Sable Scotch. I guess a lot of distilleries will have a very fair understanding of where the optimal maturation point of their spirit is. I would argue some distilleries' spirit reacts better at a younger age and some at an older age. I've talked about this previously. It's sort of like, I would argue that if you were lucky enough to own a full cask of something like a Kilhoman, and it was coming up to 5 or 6 years old, it might be really worth starting to investigate bottling that and asking for some tasting notes. If you can't get over to Kilhoman, of course, and if they can't give you access to the cask, then ask them for their tasting notes on how it's going, and they'll be pretty forthright with you. But that's not normally how it works. But it would be a really good way for you to jump in that way. And other spirit types, generally, a lot of different spirits will react at different ages, again, due to the type of the spirit, the shape of the still, the way it's made, everything like that, the type of cask. Therefore, it'll be better at an older age, which, again, is personal preference, but also it also comes down to distillery preference. Can you taste before you buy? Is that a thing on the market? No, generally not. I've never heard of that happening. It's a pretty cool idea, actually, in theory, but I think it'd be near impossible in practice, because a lot of the casks that are sold, especially to brokers, are sold at quite a young age, where they know it's basically still new make. Would the Crowd Barrel Whiskey Tribe be interested? Same as Alex, if the name and business could afford it, or it meant for a big IB or distillery. Yeah, a lot of the big IBs will buy casks through brokers. We buy a few here and there, but the society have a lot of long-standing relationships direct with the distilleries and distillery and ownership, which means that we're able to have a lot more control over wood policy and spirit sourcing rather than just going through brokers for everything. Yes, an IB might buy it. You'll see maybe some of those casks, keep an eye on them. If you can keep an eye on the cask code on them, if they disclose that information, which they should. If they can, it's normally like a 9 to 12 string code on the cask. If that code can be tracked, maybe you'll find some really expensive version of that bottling down the track, because they know they're going to have to make something off that bottling, off their investment of spending $100,000 on a cask. That's a cool idea though. I like that one. It's tamed a bit. This is tamed a bit, which is exciting. Well, look, I'm gonna stick with this as my summer dram tonight, and I really appreciate you tuning in and asking some great questions. I hope I've really answered that last question because I've been talking about it for about 10 minutes now. It really is just it's at your own risk. You do what you want to do. If you want to buy those casks, of course, and if you want to investigate them, there's often a reason why distilleries sell onto brokers, which I won't go into tonight. But there are ways that you can check what's good and what's not, and what you're interested in. But I would generally say if you think that a lot of high-end bottle prices go for inflated prices on auctions, then so do casks. And the other thing is, you don't know where those casks have come from unless they disclose that. I'm not gonna bear down on this, but unless you can actually get that disclosure, I would say that generally it's a case of just look. I wouldn't do it. There you go. There's my personal opinion. As for everything else, that's entirely up to you. Jamie Poos 1985 joined. You're just at the tail end, Jamies. I'm sorry. It's an 8 o'clock live stream, as you know. So you can always watch this up in the story later on tonight, or you can watch it on our YouTube channel, which will be up in about 30 minutes. We don't do any edits. The YouTube channel is still in portrait mode, but I'm working to fix that. Don't worry. There'll be a landscape version that you can watch on YouTube instead, or you can just stream the audio on YouTube if you prefer and leave it in the background. That's what I know a lot of people do. Thank you so much for tuning in. Always a pleasure. And I'll have a great weekend. Like I say, the streams might not happen every weekend at the moment, but they might later on. But we'll just keep this to Monday to Friday for the moment. And please, I'm throwing it all in. Just send your questions through on the Instagram stream. Send them through on Instagram. Send us a message. Send me a message on Facebook if you prefer. Send the Society a message on Facebook. Tweet us, whatever it is, and ask questions about whiskey, about casks like you did this time. And we'll do everything we can to answer it. On the live stream, you're going to see people like myself, you're going to see people like Andrew, and you're going to see more guests coming this year, which is super exciting. And I'm super pumped for this year ahead. And I hope you actually jumped on the last drops today. I should have mentioned at the beginning. Last drops, of course. We're doing a bit of a warehouse clean out. So there's some things in the warehouse which have either been in outturn before, but sort of like drifted off a bit. B, have been used only at an event and never saw the light of an outturn. So for the 20, 40, 60 people at that event, none of the other members got to see it. And that often is the case for casks that we don't get a lot of. Or C, it might be bottlings that have never been in an outturn or never featured in an event. That does happen. And we find, oh, look at that. There's 3 of these in the warehouse. Put them up in last drops. And there's some cracking whiskies in there still. We had a bit of a rush when we released the email earlier today, but there's still some great whiskies on the website. They are all, of course, panel approved. There's nothing wrong with any of them. They're full society standard as always. Have a great weekend, everyone, and I'll see you all Monday. Cheers.